it going. Welcome to the Pig Daily. Today I have a special guest returning to the show. It is Gemini. He writes the Build of the Week articles every single week, except this one, on the All Things Protoss subreddit. And like myself, he's also partnered with Team Liquid and Spawning Tool. And together we're putting out a lot of build order guides and articles for the community. So we are going to hop straight into game, guys. Let's go in there. Of course, I forgot to set the scene up, so we should load up that scene in just a moment, and there we go. So 3, 2, 1, and start. All right, Gemini, how are you going today, man? What build are we looking at?
What's up? We're doing Stats' build that he used versus Beyond back in IM Katowice. It's his quick Colossus into double forge with a late third and a late Twilight Council as well. So it's super passive, defensive, macro style play, perfect for a person like Beyond who is extremely drop oriented. So this is, like I said, super drop defense oriented, super defensive, and it's just complete macro, full on robo style.
And this is like super, probably the greediest style. And I think all of the Protoss players watching, I know I was watching this game in the audience, I believe. I think I was on a break during this match. And yeah, I remember just being like, holy crap, this is impressive, you know, because he rushes his upgrades, he rushes to the highest tech unit, and he gets a well-timed third. And doing all of that and surviving, especially a Terran like Beyond, who's so good with his multi-drops, it's bloody impressive.
Yeah, it is pretty impressive, honestly. Just like the way that he goes about defending the drops, especially, is like extremely good. Like, it's the fact that it's like so defensively oriented is something that should not be understated. Like when usually when you say like it's a defensive build order, like, you know, you're just kind of sitting back, you're not really doing that much harassment. It might be just like a little bit of foot poke or something like that. But like he doubles down on like staying defensive. Like I'll talk about later once we get to the later stages of the game, how much he devotes to just making sure that he actually does defend everything. Like he splits up his control groups and stuff. Like he's always tabbing back and forth between the different bases and everything. So like it's super defensive. Like I cannot overstate or understate exactly how defensive this build is.
Oh yeah. And just a heads up, guys, if you want just the nitty gritty, I want to get straight to the build order information. The link to the spawning tool guide there and the All Things Protoss guide as well is linked down in chat. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's pinned to the top of the comments section below. So the top comment should be that right there. So go check that out if you want to, you know, immediately throw that into game or something like that. So let's start talking about what's going on. It's a very standard opening from Stats in that it was just a sort of gate, gas, Nexus core. This is your most typical opening. We don't need to go into too many details about that. This is what almost every Protoss game in Legacy of the Void opens up like this. But interesting, he did probe scout a little bit earlier just to check, I guess, that it was a relatively standard opening out of his opponent.
Yeah, normal gateway scout is something that every player should be doing pretty much just to make sure that you're not going against the CC first on this map. Also to check if he's going for any early gas plays or one base stuff. So 13 scout gets you everything without cutting too much into economy. Like it's pretty much negligible the economy you lose by doing a probe scout that early. So it's really definitely worth it.
I like the delayed mothership as well. Just a little note for all the Protoss players out there. Like pretty much every macro PvT build these days, you delay that mothership core at least a little bit until after the 3-minute mark because it's just not as mobile. Pylons can't cover everything. It's more of like a backup, you know, bonus. You've got to have it ready by that sort of 4-minute 15, 4-minute 20 mark when medevacs can start really getting in your mineral line. But you only really need one overcharge on it. It's more important to just get out these 2 adepts very early, shut down the Reaper, even though the Reaper did get a scout on the Robo, and notice it's just a very fast robotics, but no Twilight. You're really skipping that Twilight. You're giving up a bit of that maneuverability with your units to just have more stuff, and so that you can afford more upgrades a little bit later. And because you're going for those Colossi quite early, these gas timings on the natural are really, really fast. How do you time those out?
They go down at like 4 minutes, I think. Let me double check real quickly. 3:30 actually. 4 minutes is for a different build. 3:30 is when they go down. So it is really fast actually.
Yeah, usually you've only probably got about like 8 or 10 workers on the minerals at that point, if you guys prefer to measure it that way. So it is really early on when you start to actually drop those gas geysers. And you'll notice a couple of observers coming out and some really good observer pattern. That observer on the top left, observer on the bottom right, and that observer on the top left just caught that medevac coming through. And look at this rotation from stats. He's got stalkers and adepts in the main of the mothership and warped in some stalkers at the back. And that is fantastic. I think if you're a lower level player, the easiest way to think about this defense is right around the sort of 4-minute 20, 4-minute 30 mark. You should always just have all your gateway units in one base and your mothership in the other base, right? And then as you warp in some more units, you can afford to kind of have the split a bit more even. But it's really important to have them in the mineral line so that they'll pretty much automatically kill any widow mine that drops out. And then, of course, you know, watching and focus firing means you can focus down medevacs, focus down widow mines before things get out of control.
Yeah, I was also going to talk about the observer placement, like the observer patterns this game. What happens with going for this early of a robo? I don't know. Do we have like a time constraint to where like pausing the replay to talk about it?
We can pause. Yeah.
Okay, so let's
Shall I
pause.
go back to the observer placement or just here's fine?
Yeah, here's fine. It doesn't really matter that much. But like what happens with going for this early of a robo is that you don't actually have to chrono boost it at all to get observers out. You can be continuously chrono boosting probes the entire time, and you can still have 3 observers out in time for any drop defense. So what happens is the first one goes across the map. This is like the standard like 3 observer like spread basically for 2 bases. The first one goes out across the map. That does not like come out. That comes out too early for any sort of drop to like defend versus any drop. So there's no reason to keep it back. So you can send that right across the map, and that observer will be catching any sort of early drop play that might be coming. You may not. It may, like on this map, in this game in particular, he does catch the medevac. It's kind of hard sometimes to actually catch it because they usually send it towards a different path or whatever, but it has the ability to scout for it. And then once it gets to the other base, then you'll be able to actually see where, or what his unit tech is and like what his buildings are. And from that, you can like assume that, oh, okay, he doesn't have any units here anymore. The drop passed already. And so then after that, the next 2 observers come out. You put 1 on each drop path. Next to the main and the natural respectively. Sometimes some maps have it a little bit different, but for the most part you have 1 on each side, and that covers the main area where they can drop in, and it covers basically everything that you need to at that point. If you have to sometimes skip observers, then you can just like leave the observers literally like by the nexus, so that way you don't have to really worry about trying to find it and shuffle back and forth. You just kind of wait for the drop to happen, and then the observer's already there to defend the widow mine. But for the most part, if you have 3, then you should be able to see anything that's coming at you. And this is like the super standard like setup to do that. And I'll note a couple times as the game goes on how he changes this up to coincide with how late the game is going and what will be happening.
And this is something, the observers really are the secret to any style like this, because if you don't see what angle your opponent's coming from, you won't be in the right position, and you really do need to limit all damage early on. And also, like you said, sometimes you need to leave the observer, back next to the nexus, but if you're doing this normal setup, you need to really have a set pattern. It needs to be like very exact where those observers are, because there will be moments where, as we see here, Stats is going to come down in a moment. He's going to try to take his third. Sorry, let's resync, by the way. Do you want to go to 5 minutes 50 and just tell me when you're there? Of course, guys, this is a slightly older replay, so we can't be live watching the exact same version, because every patch breaks that.
Yeah, that's really annoying. I'm ready.
All right, 550, 3, 2, 1, and play. So there's going to be this widow mine denying this third, and you're going to watch on Stats' camera. So his probe goes in, dies, and he goes, oh, immediately knows where his observer is and snatches it and pulls it over. He doesn't have a hotkey, but he knows where that is on the minimap. So he just clicks on the minimap, boxes that observer, brings it over. And it's really important to do that because it's more important to see where your opponent's coming from than it is to say, just have an observer on follow command on your Colossi, like a lot of lazy people like myself like to do, so that I don't need to manually bring anything to deal with widow mines. But this sort of adjustment is really important. So yeah, having that vision is very big. And we'll see. I'm not sure if Stats sends that observer back into position to the right. I believe he will put it out on the map or something like that. But there's a lot of observer rotation in Stats play, so that's actually like really interesting to watch.
Yeah, the forward observer got sniped, so he's sending the other observer that he just used to go over across now to check the third base timings and whatnot. So basically, when you get your forward observer sniped like that, you kind of have to make a rotation in that regard. And then depending on what your build is, you can either put in another observer, or you can just put like another pylon or a unit towards that area that it was originally covering, so that the forward observer can then, or that observer can then become the forward observer.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing here, but he just leaves the area clean pretty much. And instead what he's doing is he's splitting his units up, so that way he can look at the he doesn't have to always see exactly where it's coming. He can just kind of go to the base when it drops there.
And what's really interesting at this point as well is, so he's got his Colossi, he's got double upgrades on the way. He's only now going for a Twilight Council at about 7 minutes does he drop that. And, you know, he's really just focused on defense. But there's something I want to point out at this point, which is he's more focused on the rotation of his opponent's units than anything else. That's the most important thing with your observer scouting and positioning, right? I know we're talking about this so much because it's such a big part of this build, but this observer out front his base. So once he saw the push coming, he kind of tracked it with that observer and then leaves this observer in a position where he knows kind of what side of his base Bjorn's army is on. If Bjorn pulls back, he's going to go back over this observer to rotate back to the left-hand side. So in the meantime, Stats, just with a single observer just kind of outside his base a little bit, will always see the rotation of Bjorn from which extreme side of his base it's at to the other. And I think that's really important because even though he doesn't know exactly where Bjorn is, you see that Stats here kind of just splits his army between both bases, and he's always going to be well prepared this way because his left-hand side has no defense at this point, just the mothership.
Yeah, that's something I was going to bring up as well, how that's important, not only in observer vision and not only with this build, but in every game pretty much that you play, and you can use pylons for the vision as well, or units or whatever. Not seeing, if you have, like, provided you have good over vision coverage of the entire map, or as much of the map as you can, provided you have that sort of coverage, you gain more information from not seeing them than you do from actually seeing them. Because with if we see right now, like, you have the front observer there and then you have two observers up the top, you have so much area covered there that you see more like, since there's no actual units in those areas, you know more based off of what he can possibly doing, or what he could be doing based off of that, because there's those three areas that he isn't, meaning there's basically only one other area or two other areas that he could be at that point in time. So it's very easy to assume and judge where they're going to be based off of how much vision you have, because you can negate things. Because of that, you can cross things off your big checklist of where the hell can the Terran army be, if you have that much vision coverage.
I love at this point as well with that hallucination. He was like, there could still be a drop hiding on that right-hand side. He was very aware that he was, like, blind there. So he just sent a hallucination from the very top right-hand corner all the way down the right-hand side of the map. And the reason that's so important is because he doesn't want to just leave his army split half in the back, not knowing what's going on. Like, this kind of movement and rotation of your army and how you group it up and split it up is so important. So he scouted that whole right-hand side. He knows there's nothing there. He's got observers on the left, which will give him warning to get back into the main if there's a doom drop there. And so his whole army now can come together. And this is important, right? Because this is, as the game goes on, there's more and more chances of a frontal push, right? This is something you always need to be kind of keeping in your mind. And we're not seeing that in this specific replay, but if you're playing against TY, for instance, if you're playing against anyone on ladder, every Protoss player ever seems to just complain about fast tank pushes, right? That's what that frontal observer is so important for. You're always looking at your opponent's production. You're saying, hey, oh, this guy's building siege tanks really early. He's just building units. I'm going to have all my army, pushing out and intercepting him. You can't just play this sort of style with a static, oh, I've just got observers looking for drops, oh, there's tanks sieged up on my third with bunkers building, and, like, my army's not even together and I'm screwed. Because once those pushes get set up, they become so hard to break. But if you intercept them before they fully siege up and set up in the perfect position, you can just destroy those pushes. So it's a lot about understanding and recognizing exactly what you see with your observers.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I mentioned slightly before is Stats there a couple times this game as well, is that when you lose your frontal observer, try to replace it as quickly as possible with something else. So, like, this game, he sent a lot of adepts forward to, like, be scouting for stuff, so that's important to do as well. I don't know if we want to, how much we want to talk about like actual engagements or whatnot, but for that,
Yeah.
like that fight that we just saw, like specifically, it's really weird because like it seems like he could Beyond should just be able to roll over him right there with like that ridiculous Viking count, but like he just kind of like sits back even after getting a good EMP on the Ghost around the High Templar as well. So that was kind of a confusing fight to me when I was watching it, but I guess I don't know
Let's look
exactly.
at it one more time. I'm gonna
Sure.
rewind as well. So we can definitely watch this fight, and this is, as the game goes on, it's less about the build and more about just PvT in general, and all the
Yeah.
different situations that arise, and that's fine. That's all very very interesting and useful stuff. So, what we're gonna see here is a ridiculous Viking count, right? I think this is probably Beyond's biggest mistake this game is
Yeah.
that's obscene. 19 Vikings, like I think Beyond definitely made some errors this game. He actually did a really good job with his rotation of units earlier to get 7 probe kills, even though it's not a massive amount. He picked off a stalker or two early on. Units lost tab is relatively even, but he played quite economically. And the thing is, the Colossi really aren't a threat anymore. And I guess maybe he went this count because he knew that Stats wanted to go for Storm. Sorry, I accidentally fast forwarded through the fight. But yeah, looking at the micro here, Stats really, this is like such a devastating timing because he needs Storm to help fight against this army, but the actual ground army is very small of Beyond. It's only like 40 Marines and 10 Marauders, and they're not even all here, of course, because the way Terran production takes a long time to get across the map. And even though he does EMP all the Storm, it's 2-2 upgrades for the Adepts and Stalkers, so I can understand why Beyond does pull back there, because if he does lose that army, it's a little bit frightening, but just killing the Colossi, feeling like, oh yeah, I got rid of like the most reliable AoE, I can understand him wanting to wait for a little bit more bio, and then, push with some Liberators and so on. But definitely there was a very dangerous point right here, and it's interesting because if we think about this push timing, I guess the strengths of Stats play is he gets Glaives, right? Glaives kicks in, 2-2 kicks in, and so even though the army looks kind of pathetic, it's a lot stronger than what you might expect it to actually kind of stand up to, just the gateway units.
Yeah, something else I noticed was that Beyond's medevacs weren't really healing the entire fight. Like his unit, like he stemmed his units forward, and the medevacs were trying to like catch up. And then he kind of had to, he had a storm, he had to back up again, kind of. So like, his units were actually a lot weaker than what would have normally been. I mean, like, yeah, it makes sense now. Even though he ate a pretty big EMP, that should have been split up a little bit better against.
So it's interesting as well going Storm instead of these units. So I'm at about 13 minutes, by the way. We don't need to sync up exactly. We can, because we're just going to be casually talking about everything. But yeah, Storm is always interesting because I feel like you kind of want to be going back to Colossi a lot more often when you've got Storm. Because with Storm, it's so much better for killing Vikings. But I guess overall, it's just a big preference thing, right? If you're not confident in your High Templar spreading and splitting against EMP, then you're usually better off going Disruptors instead. I personally love Disruptors because they're much simpler to micro. You can't just get hit by an EMP. It does nothing to Disruptors. But the problem is that Disruptors don't add anything to your anti-Viking or anti-Liberator. They're just like really, really powerful AoE to zone out the ground army and potentially do big damage there. And you really need to be much more on point with your Stalkers, kind of blinking forward, focusing down Liberators, focusing down Vikings. Whereas I feel like with stat style here, any moment where Beyond gets his units a bit clumped up, the Storm just wrecks these air units really hard, and I feel like they just go down much faster. Would you agree? Do you think there's any other reason to go Storm over Disruptors? Do you think it's more a preference thing? Any thoughts?
I think it's not only preference, it is actually stylistic and has more benefits than disruptors. One of them, a big one, being that you can actually use them for other reasons other than the fight. Spreading them out and using them for drop defense, for I mean, you can use disruptor drops, I guess, but like storm drops are a little bit more effective late game. Disruptor drops are more early game, but like mostly for drop defense is what I was going to talk about.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
Disruptors is the big meaty a move. I mean, not really, but the big meaty, just like brute force army basically, where you just go at it and you just like put as too much splash damage at them for them to micro against and hope you can land some good shots.
Yeah.
And other than that, you can't do anything. You have to use warpins and cannons for defenses on your exterior bases. So as the game gets longer, it can be a little bit difficult to deal with that, especially because when you're going for that having that much robo, you're going to be on double robo as well. So you're going to have less gateway production in the first place with that. So going for Templar style, not only does it free up your, I'll talk about this as actually the second point. Freeing up the robo is another big point. The biggest thing is that it allows you to do drop defense a lot better. It allows you to spread the High Templar out between bases. It goes well with cannons. And it also gives you a lot of backup storms as well. Like you can easily just go back to another base, get the High Templar from there, and then you can surprise the Terran with some extra storms. The other thing it does... Sorry,
no,
go
continue.
ahead.
Finish up.
Sure. So the other thing it does is that it frees up the robo, make more observers and more war prisms for more harassment and vision control. You can be a little more liberal with your observer movement and placement, and if one gets sniped, it's not the end of the deal or end of the day, because you can just you're not relying on using your robo to actually win you the game with splash units. So you can do that, and you can also get a lot more war prisms out. So it allows you to diversify a little bit in the late game instead of being held up by the robo crutch the entire time.
That's actually such a good way of describing that whole thing. And this brings me back to end of last year after BlizzCon, when I did the show with Showtime looking at his games that he beat Beyond in BlizzCon, where he went for, the mix. He went a couple Colossi into Disruptors and Storm. Yep. And DTs as well. And yeah, he was basically saying the same thing. There's such a supply efficient, reliable way to defend drops, because you can feedback medevacs, which is always incredible. Sometimes you just snap a bunch of medevacs out of the sky. So you can have like a couple cannons and a High Templar, and then you've got Storm as well. Whereas Disruptors are like so useless against drops. If your opponent's looking at all, it just does nothing. And he also said the DTs are really important as well for, because often you'll get into base trades. So if you have a combination of High Templar for defense in a base trade or a messy game and DTs for the offense, it kind of makes your opponent's job so difficult as a Terran player to have turrets everywhere. Not only are Adept Warpins hard, suddenly if a missile turret or two go down, and suddenly there's a DT, in one base, a DT in another base. I think every Terran or Zerg player has really experienced that scenario of a game that gets messy or suddenly ends up a little bit lower economy. DTs become this like incredible powerful unit. Often you're like, oh, I've got to go win with like a Doom drop, and a couple High Templar can potentially shut that down. So I really like this way of thinking about it, because I've always been a Disruptor guy recently, because I like just having this really simple army I can just push with and try to kill my opponent then with a few Disruptors and a few Colossi. But this is a much more balanced style that plays longer into the game.
Yeah, exactly. I've been going Disruptors a lot recently as well, just from the very beginning of the game as well, not just like starting with Colossus, going full M-canning style, but I've been starting to trickle Storm back into the play, into the book as well, and it's just like, it just feels so much better again, like late game, like I feel back in Hots and Wings and stuff, like that's the real PvT, I feel like. But yeah, Disruptors, like it's just entirely okay, I have to win the main fight and that's it. Like you can't use them anywhere else basically. So Storm is the much more versatile tech. Also just catered to this build specifically. At the time when he's transitioning to Storm, you end up kind of floating a little bit of gas at that point in time anyway, so going for Disruptors is a little less efficient, because you just won't actually be able to afford it properly, whereas going for Templar at the time he does, you're just able to afford it a little bit more, just because of the way you're floating minerals at that time, just the natural way that happens. So Templar are a little bit more natural to go into.
Nice. And as this game gets very messy in the late game, we see DT Blink is mixed in. This is something...
He doesn't really use it that much to much interesting effect, but like he has it, so it's like, oh, it's sick. Like
it's funny, right?
He did the thing.
I did see one game, I think it was like an uncast replay I was watching or something, and he actually made it work. It was this same map, and like I could tell it's something like, this is not him just fucking around. This is an important match. Like he's actually practiced this so much, and like he always looks for like the kind of surprising DT flank in the middle of a big battle. And if they get off like 3 swipes before the Terran realizes and scans, they actually just pay for themselves, because they just like massacre a few of the ghosts and like Marines so quickly. And you're like, was that actually like vaguely cost efficient? But I would never like ever try this myself in a serious way. I would try this when I'm trying to like get a little highlight reel going, because I'm just like, it's so high risk, high reward. You know, you blink 6 DTs in and they just die, and you're like, oh, that was a lot of money.
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't gotten to many late game scrappy PVTs where I could have implemented it, but so I don't have much experience myself. But yeah, it seems like I guess it is something he's doing, because like he was incorporating into his army the entire time, because like he realizes that it's low eco at this point. So you have to be, if you force enough scans, then it's just like, oh, okay, I can just go in with my DTs now.
Oh yeah. And he's so good with his back and forth, and really I love the way Stats does non-committal map control pushes, right?
Yes,
because
you
know, we all as Protoss players talk about what's our biggest nightmare. It's Widow Mines and Liberators, or tanks and mines and Liberators sieged up outside our base. It's where the Terran can kind of choose the engagement because he's set up in an aggressive position and you've got to attack into him. You notice Stats is always active on his map once he hits the mid game, and this is scary for the Terran because, oh, okay, I've got to watch out for that army. It creates a sort of pressure. And it opens up opportunities, especially with Storm, for him to have a lot of back and forth, where there's more room for him to spread his High Templar, to have backup High Templar to fall back on, rather than, say, getting wedged behind a base and then Liberators siege up and his whole army gets EMP'd and he's got nowhere to run to. And most importantly, how does Stats win PVTs? It's all about Warp Prisms. What we've seen in the last 5, 6, 7 minutes of this game has been non-stop those Warp Prisms going in. He had that hidden one in the top left-hand side of the map. He had one like set up just above the 4th of Beyond, warping in adepts over and over again for so long. And the one in the back as well. And those adepts getting kills, that's like where he says, Terran, you need to come and engage into me on my terms. You need to eat some storms. You need to eat some Colossi shots. And yeah, he just always finds that damage. So like, I think the Warp Prism as your kind of main way of getting damage is really important. So I actually wanted to go back and quickly look at one of those mid-game engagements where those warp ends are happening, Gemini, because I can't remember which one it was specifically. I should have written down the timestamp. But there was one, I think it's probably around 13 minutes, where right around the time he starts warping in these adepts, you start to see him take these kind of sloppy engagements in the middle, or at least one sloppy engagement. And this is kind of funny because I can really relate to that, where you're like, my adepts are fucking you up and distracting you, it's time to engage, and you take this like really bad engage because you think the Terran won't be looking. But it's always only the beginning of a bad engage, and then Stats will, you know, disengage, re-engage, and this sort of stuff. So we're going to see it in just a moment. I'm going to tell you the timestamp in a second.
I actually,
just kind of fast forwarding.
I'm thinking it's probably the one, like you said, it's right at 13. I was actually noting this, going to note this as well. He sends in like adepts to the natural, and then he takes like a weird fight at the ramp, right?
Yes, this was it. Good. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going. I'm at 12:45 now. We don't need to be perfectly synced up, but that should be cool.
I think this actually went very well, personally. Oh,
I think it started out okay, but he kind of wasn't microing, right? Like he should have microed down the ramp.
Let me.
The counterattack does great.
Okay, yeah, this is what I was gonna. Okay, I was gonna touch on this as well, so. You can go ahead on you can whatever you were gonna say.
Oh, I was just gonna look at it and kind of think about it, but he does catch a few Liberators, and this whole kind of on the map, I'm pressuring you. But the moment Beyond Siege is up, you know, it's like, okay, I'm gonna shade in, and notice he's waiting with his army. The shades are about to go in. As the shades are going in, he's actually committing with his army because he feels confident here. He gets a few decent storms, but he does cop some bad EMPs, and his army gets super choked up on the ramp, and it looks kind of awkward, but because he's shredding the SCVs at home, he can afford to take a slightly questionable trade. I think it was still fine as well in the middle, but it was one of those dangerous angles. You're like, oh, should you really fight there? But that's like, where we think about that upgrades, right? That's what you're going to talk about. Take it away.
The fight, like right at 13 minutes, right, where like the Liberators like siege at like the corner or whatever. Yeah. So I was going to mention this, how like, every time that's like, not every time, but a lot of times.
You went a little bit quieter there. Oh, I think you're good.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. I think I moved from the mic. So a lot of times when stats attacks, he is harassing at the same time. And this is kind of like a very important thing that you should apply to all matchups.
Yep.
Whenever you harass and attack at the exact same time, you're guaranteeing damage somewhere. There's no way that the Terran or whatever opponent is going to be able to properly defend against both of those things perfectly, unless you just send your units straight into like his idle army, like sitting at his natural or something like that. Like, there's going to be damage dealt somewhere. So it's very important to try to do as many different kinds of attacks as possible. And so the cool thing, like the cool thing about that is that even it allows you to take kind of sometimes questionable engages where it seems like you kind of shed off a couple more units than you really should. But it's okay as long as you know at least the harassment is doing damage. Because the main attacking army is pretty much just acting as a defense or as a distraction at that point from the defense of the harassment. So you're guaranteeing damage somewhere, whereas the actual fight itself isn't maybe going exactly how you planned. But I still think this one actually ended up being okay. Like I think he got just like EMP'd a little bit, but it ended up being like whatever. And then he caught some liberators that were like rallied. I mean, maybe I guess he could have like pushed down the ramp a little bit. I'm not sure. I don't know. There's a lot of ghosts, man.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I think it was perfectly fine. I think it was perfectly executed.
Yeah, and that 1-2 punch though, you know, I love the way you said that. You're basically playing on your opponent's APM restraints, especially Terran players. Really, it takes a lot of APM for them to respond to counter attacks. This is why you see Zergs rolling in a Zergling Baneling counter attack and jump on their main army at the same time. And if you guys aren't stats and you can't kind of monitor both fights pretty decently the way he was, you've really got to prioritize a little bit, right? Like sometimes you'll just push in on the front and like you'll come in and snipe off a single liberator and pull back. So it's kind of like putting the fear in them, forcing their attention there without you really putting your army in danger, right? You're not really committing. But your counterattacks in their natural at the same time, shredding up SCVs, right? So sometimes you do these like lower risk versions rather than the full commitment like what Stats did there. But Stats, he's got the game sense. He knew he could take a decent trade there. He felt confident. He microed it pretty decently. And we're going to see him continue to do this again and again. We saw there, I'm at like 15 minutes now, but like he kind of warped into depths and then he jumped in, killed a few liberators, realized he couldn't continue taking the engage, and he just kind of backed off. And it's incredible the sort of micro that Stats puts into this, but you got to understand as well, he's playing against Beyond. He's playing against a guy who's EMPing literally everything that comes close to him. He's not letting any storms hit him most of the time. He's just backing off from everything. So for your regular players, of course, you're not going to need to have as perfect back and forth, in and out micro, constantly warping in adepts. Often, a single adept warp in while engaging at the front is going to completely dismantle your opponent.
Yeah. I also just realized the exact fight you were talking about. I was talking about the preface fight, the fight that like just before that. I realized how he got bottled up right afterwards, and I was like, yeah, okay. I guess you're right. He probably should have shuffled down a little bit better. So, right. I see what you're saying.
Oh, okay, yeah, just up on top of the ramp because there was like a little skirmish before that.
Yeah, I get you. Okay, cool.
That's cool. Now they were both nice little engagements there. So, okay, awesome. So there's a few different things I'd like to talk about from now on, answering questions in chat. Were there any areas of the game that you kind of wanted to hone in on and go take a look at? Or should we just move on to questions? And
I was just going to note a couple changes of map vision throughout the game.
Just talk about it, and I will kind of find the right points, and I'll just kind of zoom through and find matching observing points.
One of them, so at 12, I was going to talk about 12 minutes and then at 17 minutes. So at 12 minutes, let me jump to that. So this was, okay, so.
12 minutes is map hacks, man.
Huh?
He's got map hacks.
Oh, yeah, he's got a shit ton. So, yeah. Also before that, so I guess I'll just touch on it super quickly. He moved his frontal observer up to this is map specific, by the way, up to the main, since there's such a large area that people can drop from with there. He just sent his second observer to double cover that, and then he was using his warp prism and just random unit selections like forward, put in the middle of the map to scout for any sort of attacks that were coming along. So this is just kind of a map dependent thing where once the game got past like about like 10 minutes or so is when he did this. Just because Doom drops become so so potent on this map, particularly due to that giant area there. But also, the only spot right now that he is basically not covering is around his 4th base. So this is what I was kind of talking about before, how having vision gives you more, like not seeing anything gives you more information than actually seeing anything. So he knows that there's nothing going into his main right now with his huge coverage there. He realizes that nothing was going across the map in the mid because he's got a observer there. He's got a scout on the 4th base with that obsept right there. And then his army is positioned in front of his 3rd base. So the only thing that's not covered here is his 4th base. And because of that, he's put down extra cannons down. He's got a High Templar there with enough energy for feedback and storm. So that way, if anything comes and drops there, he'll be fully prepared for that. So any place that you have dark vision where you can't actually see, that's where you want to put all of your defenses towards. And so with Stats' army positioning in the middle here, he allows it so that he can put a couple more resources into defense over at the 4th base, because it's not as easy to cover that because of the just because of the way he's set up at this point in time. Or you could also just put like a pylon or something leading over there, and you can easily not have to worry about putting as many cannons there or whatever. But I was just going to note that super quick. And then jumping ahead to like between 17 and 18 minutes, this is when he's out in the middle of the map a lot, and he's pushing between the gold base and the ramp. He's just kind of trying to posture and kind of keep beyond on his side of the map, and then he's going between the two sides basically to keep him on his toes and try to get some sort of reaction on from him. He wants him to like misstep and then allow him to engage into a different point where he's not. But while this is happening, this is one area where Stats slips up a little bit, and he allows him to get caught off guard because of the lack of vision that he did not set up.
Down to the right of his army, right?
Yeah, so he's doing this attack also to set up the top base, which I actually really like him taking this top base, because his attack pattern defends this top base. There's no way Bjorn is going to go right towards that unless it's with a side drop. And of course, you're not really going to send one over there really at this point in time. Like, it's not really, you're not going to try to find that. But what he doesn't do is that he does not leave anything in the way between the gold base and his 4th base. You'll notice there's literally a straight line that Bjorn can go from his gold to Stats' 4th, where there's nothing that Stats can see that with. And that's actually exactly what happens. Just after this happens, he'll end up putting a unit like right in the middle there. But because of that, he assumed that his army positioning on the map would turn Bjorn from dropping him. But Bjorn, recognizing this, went for the drop, and this ended up like forcing it into that like awkward base trade scenario for a little bit, and it kind of made it low econ for a little bit, and it was kind of like, oh, is Bjorn actually gonna win? Whoa. But
it looked really good for Stats, right? Before this drop hits, Stats is up 40 supply.
Exactly.
He's got equal upgrades. He's got Storm, Colossi, Immortals, DTs, and Blink Tech. He's up on 70 probes versus 40 SCVs, most importantly, and he's up a base as well. So it's just one of these things where if he could just kind of keep on trading, he was going to steadily kind of eke out the better trades or even trades and just win through even trades. But then it becomes a lot messier, a little bit dicier. So even in these later stages, that map vision is just so damn vital. And if you play a Stargate style, that's why things, if you keep your Oracle alive all game, can sometimes be a little bit easier because you can just map hack their army constantly. But no matter what, you know, maintaining that vision is so damn important. But I love Stats' reaction as well. He just kind of jumps on that base. He's like, oh, okay, if I just go home, like, you're going to take a base and get out of there. I'm not fast enough. So he just warps in, you know, units at home. DTs and Colossi eventually clean it up, takes out a base, and he says, okay, we traded a base for a base. Like, this is acceptable. So it's good for him to be decisive like that. I think a lot of Protoss players have been so traumatized by Doom drops on ladder that, like, the moment they like get out positioned by a drop, they're just like, and just like smashing their keyboard and like raging. But you'd be surprised how vulnerable the Terran is to your frontal army every time they pick up such a big drop. And sometimes you can just push in and wreck their economy just as hard.
Yeah, he also knew that he had his gold base still for quite a while. There was still a lot of resources on there, and he also had the top base nearing completion as well. So he didn't see any value in beyond sniping that fourth base like at that current moment where it was urgent enough for him to instantly like, oh crap, I need to go back and defend that because that's like my last mining expansion or something like that. He realized that he could sacrifice that in favor of the gold base and the newly finishing top base, and then he even expands to the top left as well. So he realized that it wasn't urgent enough for him to fully go back, and he was able to start trading a little bit and take out a base and keep the rest of the Terran army back as well. Because once you go back to deal with the first drop, then he's going to drop again, and he's going to continue to split you up as much as possible, and then you're like double fucked, because not only are you going to lose the fourth base, then all of a sudden you're not in position to deal with the next counter drop, and so staying on the map and keeping beyond on his side helps with that as well, so that he didn't continuously get split up, and then that would have definitely allowed Beyond to end up winning the game if he had done that, honestly.
All right, so that's some fantastic points and analysis. I think we've covered most of the key points. Let's look for a couple of questions in Twitch chat, as well as I've got my own couple of just one or two talking points I want to discuss with you very quickly. But first of all, let's take some questions. Okay. Azerty Yuhajuk says, Pig, talking about this build, I don't really like it because of the late Twilight Council. What do you think about Zest's version of it? Oh, holy shit, that's perfect. That was one of my questions.
Yeah.
Awesome. I literally just chose the first question, and I'm like, this is one of the points I want to talk about. Fucking perfect. I like you very much. I don't have to read my own question from my fake alter ego in my Google Drive document. So that's always something which makes me a little bit happy. So I actually wrote the same thing. So for anyone who doesn't know what Zest's build is, Zest's build is basically it's a slightly different version. I'm gonna go back and we can kind of just watch from the early game so you guys can get familiar with this build. We didn't really talk through it, but like I said, I don't think with these videos I need to talk through the build because you got the spawning tool link, you got the build of the week guide written up there from Gemini, and you get a good feel just as we watch the game of what's going on. So I think this is an okay way to do things. So with Zest's build, basically it's the same sort of pattern, but he goes for Blink then Colossi. So his Robo's a little bit later, which means less observers as well. And then he goes double upgrades as well before third base. So his third base is much later. It's a much more two-base style. So I'm gonna answer first and we can discuss it. So the basic changes are control, right? If you got Blink, you can jump on a drop and shut it down. So if your opponent overextends into you, you can jump on top of that and kill it, right? That's awesome. That's really cool. It allows you to chase down drops a little bit more, shut down Liberators a little bit more. What's the downside? The downside is your third is so late. So if a Terran player doesn't overextend into your Blink, doesn't let you kill any units, and takes a well-timed third, the Terran player will usually get ahead against that style economically. So it makes it a lot easier to control what's going on, and I actually think for people who really are comfortable with Blink, the Zest style is a lot easier to play for most players on ladder who aren't as good with their observers out, rotating, defending with their non-Blink upgraded units. But what are the strengths of this style? And you can add anything else as well, Gemini, but I think the main ones are just, well, if you're skipping Blink, you get more economy faster, your upgrades are faster, and you just have your Colossus faster. So you're getting, does Blink really help you in a frontal engagement? No, it doesn't at all. And it's very micro intensive. So if it comes down to your opponent's multi-dropping you, Blink can help if you blink underneath and shoot down the medevac. But if you're a few seconds late to Blink and they've already unloaded, it doesn't help you at all, right? Unless you've got great micro and you can micro two spots at once. So just having faster Colossi, faster upgrades, and more observers can actually make it easier to hold on depending on your skill set as a player. So I think this, they just kind of play differently depending on your style as a player. And I think this one is more of a solid build in that because you're investing in a faster third base, you have more options open to you and it's a lot more flexible.
Yeah, it's basically a argument of mobility over brute force, where in this build you're going for more units quicker instead of tech, and relatively Colossus is tech, yes, but it's still also a unit. It directly helps you in that regard. So whereas Blink, it's more of just it's pure mobility. It's just a straight upgrade. It doesn't have any actual statistics. So for this, it's literally just having more units in the right position at the right time. And that is more beneficial than having just an upgrade that allows you to move around a little bit quicker sometimes. Like Pig was saying, it relies on you seeing it exactly when the drop is happening and being able to catch the Terran off guard by blinking under and immediately eliminating the drop. If that doesn't happen, then all of a sudden the blink would have, it's honestly just, you've rather would not have had it. So it's just a different, yeah, like you were saying, it's a different in style, it's a different preference. But with this, if you get like used to observing or to rotating your observers and being able to split your army in half using 2 control groups, it is extremely beneficial.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's a good point from Probe in chat as well. So he just proved himself wrong, by the way. So for anyone watching the VOD, you guys don't get to see Twitch chat. He's like, the Colossus and upgrades aren't even faster. Like, and he does like that face, like, you guys are so wrong. And then he says, it's like, he's like, well, it is like 30 seconds faster. He's like, but you don't get a warp prism with this. And I think that's the most important point, because Probe recently just destroyed the Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia qualifier for Austin. He's going to be going over there, killed Iaguz in the finals and everything. And he was playing, a lot of this kind of Twilight Robo Colossi styles. And I believe Probe was playing with the later upgrades, like the 8-minute double forge, if I remember correctly, which is the next thing I want to talk about as well. And the thing is, that gives you a warp prism, and I think warp prism is fantastic because it allows you to put a lot of pressure on your opponent, and just the threat of a warp prism forces your opponent to be so much more defensive, and it just kind of allows things to be very different. With this style, though, you're basically saying, I want to be the master of defense. I'm not putting counter pressure on you. And that's why it is exceptionally hard for players who aren't comfortable. If you're not comfortable being purely defensive for the first like 8-9 minutes of the game, this is not the build for you. But it does offer strengths as well for that. And really, this is like the Showtime and Stats build. They're the 2 guys who play this style, and they're 2 of the very few Protoss players who I think it actually looks like a good idea for them to play at that pro level. However, if you are, a regular style player, I think you can make it work. I think you can make it work as well. But that does bring in another question as well, which is, okay, so we've talked about that style. What about with this style? This is the only replay I've actually seen of this exact execution from Stats. What I've seen, and obviously there's a lot of GSL and Star League games and everything. I need to hunt through more VODs. I didn't do an absolutely exhaustive check, but a lot of the time he does a version of this same opening where he does delay the upgrades, and he goes for the exact same opening, but then he goes Twilight Council and gets the double forge down at 8 minutes. So it allows him to get a much faster resonating glaives, occasionally blink, and then get the later upgrades. And I've seen him do that, and that's also the style which Showtime, I believe, actually invented, first of all. I'm not sure. All these guys, Protoss players, talk to each other these days and share builds, but one of them, I definitely saw Showtime do it first. And that build gives you a bit more, oh, my adepts hit a bit harder, I can defend frontal pushes. And that was something which Stats was really favoring against TY, where TY was doing a lot more aggressive pushes, early Cyclone Marine pushes, big pushes with like, a tank or 3 tanks. And he was always trying to get out resonating glaives rather than the fast 1-1 in the grand finals of this tournament. So I was wondering your thoughts, Gemini. Do you think one style is better than the other? Or do you think it's just that same argument of brute force over kind of mobility?
I think it's partially the same argument. I think it's also opponent dependent. Like Beyond is known as the guy that's going to drop a shit ton, so Stats I think catered the build a little bit more towards that, knowing that Beyond would probably go for that style, whereas TY is the guy that's going to do the frontal pushes. He's going to do the more he's not going to focus like super hard on like dropping you literally every medevac's worth of units that he gets. Yeah. So I think it revolves a little bit more on that.
Might have been a bit of fear, right, of those TY pushes. So he's like, you know what? Exactly. I just want to have glaives out for these like awkward 2-base heavy timings with the delayed third from TY, whereas Beyond's just going to drop. Like Beyond is a bit predictable, so maybe Stats thought, hey, I can get away with doing this style because I kind of know you're going to play a much more typical style. You're not going to hit one of these crisp 7.5, 8-minute TY pushes.
Yeah, I think that's a valid argument to put towards that. Also, for anyone like wondering, like, okay, well, what if I'm doing this build that's technically supposed, like, according to you, you say it's best against drop styles. What if my opponent's not doing that and is doing one of the frontal pushes? Well, you should be able to see that with the front, with like the forward observer. And the most important part of that is engaging across the map as soon as possible, so that it forces them to siege up and like kind of take some mid fight. Like, don't actually commit to the fight. Like, you don't actually like go out and fight like right away at his side of the map. You just go ahead and posture as if you're going to, and just kind of poke at him real quick, and then it's like, oh crap, but fight's gonna happen at the siege, and then it stalls the army for a little bit, and then you get another warping round. Then he moves out again, and then you do it again, and then you keep doing that until he's at your base, and then you should have enough units to defend. That's the general idea of how it's supposed to happen. Of course, it's not always easy to do that, and some of the pushes are extremely difficult to hold regardless, because of the their unit count just sometimes is just straight better or straight higher. But that's the general idea of how it should happen.
Yeah, I'm just going to very quickly, while we start to finish up, I will show just a tiny bit of the VODs from ESL, from IAM Katowice, of the slightly different versions of play, so you guys can see kind of the difference in those games, if it decides to work anyway. We'll see. We'll see. Will it work? Yes, man, one of the capture is working. And you can see the very different situations where stats kind of does change things up a little bit. But I think that about rounds it up. Probe did have some more comments. He basically said that you don't really, in his opinion, he doesn't feel like you need Colossus so early, and he still actually gets a 5-minute double forge with the way Probe's been doing it with the, the more Zest style and the Warp Prism out. But I'm guessing the third base ends up quite a bit later with that, Probe. Let us know your thoughts. We'd love more of that. We can continue this discussion, as obviously you are a higher level Protoss player than both of us, and StarCraft is a complex and interesting game. And yeah, I mean, I think earlier Colossus is not a bad thing. It's not necessarily about do you need Colossus that early, but you hit your 2 and 3 Colossi much faster. And, the ability to split those up is very useful versus those multi-pronged drops as well. Awesome. So I don't think there was any other too relevant questions there. And no, I think I answered the questions, and we had most of the discussion points. A great point from Shadi, which we did pick up on a bit later in the analysis of that engagement, where, Stats took the 3-3 versus 2-2 engage in that Proxima game. He did that really, really well. And yeah, things kind of changed up because of that. So anyway, this has been awesome. We should finish up. We've talked about a lot of different things. What are the main takeaways from today? I think it's a totally as shit style. It's fucking incredibly powerful, because if you can manage to split your units up and block the aggression, oh, it feels so good, and it looks so awesome, because you just hit this amazing power point with your army. Your 2-2 is so early. You've got that 3 Colossi up so fast. It's really beautiful. But it's all about those observer positioning, that map control, the rotations of the observer. I love that there was also that one moment of kind of map control weakness with Stats, which you pointed out, where he didn't have the vision. The drop came down and got his 4th, and almost really kind of put the game into contention. But also the rotation of the army and the pressure he creates with the army that provides map control and placement. And I love that point you kept hitting on as well, Gemini, today, where you said, look, if you can see this side of the map really well, you don't really need to see the other side, because your army can kind of be over there, right? And you can kind of reinforce that side. If your army starts moving out into the center of the map, as soon as Stats started pushing into the center of the map, bam, there's 4 cannons and a higher Templar. Like, it's just this absolute, like, strategic, I will not be outpositioned by drops. I'm going to set up the defense and just get out of control, man.
Yeah, and if you look at the guide I put on Team Liquid or All Things Protoss, I put a couple pictures highlighting examples of the observer placement and how it changes over time and stuff. And I did one in particular, like showcasing how like not seeing anything will allow you to infer where the army can potentially come from. So if you want to
was that a threat of its own, or was that in this the Team Liquid strategy article for this build?
No, they're implemented into the guides.
Nice. Okay, awesome. We're gonna definitely link all of that up as well, because those Team Liquid strategy guides have been amazing, going along with our spawning tool build of the week articles for all things Protoss. So awesome, man. All right, let's finish up. This has been a fantastic walkover of this build. I should definitely get you on more often, maybe in another week or two, to look at another Protoss build. So before I let you go, any any shout outs, and can you go ahead and post your Twitter and Twitch in the Twitch chat just so I can
Cool.
link those straight into the YouTube video as well?
Sure. Well, thank you for letting me come on. I'd always appreciate being able to talk about all this stuff. Being someone who is going to school to be a teacher as well, it's good practice. So go ahead and look up all things Protoss on Reddit for anyone who wants to learn how to be a better Protoss player and to the best of their ability. We have a very active community of people willing to go over any replays that you submit, and there's plenty of guides like the ones that I do and other people do as well. Lots of links on the sidebar as well for different resources that you can use to improve. So definitely should be your one-stop shop for anything Protoss related. Of course, there's always PiG's stuff as well, but other than that, follow me on Twitter, ggemini19, or Twitch, Gemini SE2. If you want some full epic memeage, go ahead. Other than that, I don't believe I have anything else to say. Thank you again.
Fantastic. Well, I'm linking the Team Liquid strategy article for you guys in chat as well. Check out those YouTube comments below, guys. As we said before, I do submit replays for ICYFAR this week as well. It's going to be Siege Warfare, any ridiculous contains or bunker rushes, or I really want to see someone do a pylon-disruptor rush. I don't know what that involves, but I just want to see someone do stupid stuff, because that's what iCast Your Freaking Replays is all about. Your freaking awesome replays. So guys, I'm going to link all that in the YouTube comments below. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate you all staying and watching such a long show. Thank you very much for hanging out. I'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night. All right.